Hi, I'm Bob Hagan, and welcome to the Bob Hagan Show, brought to you by It's Relevant. The goal of our show is to introduce you to the unsung heroes, movers and shakers, and key influencers in and around the various towns of Fairfield County. Enjoy the show. Today on the show, I have Pastor Nathan Hart from the Stanwich Church, located in Greenwich, Connecticut. And I couldn't wait to get him on the show because of the remarkable work you and the congregation are doing in regards to a horrific event that happened in October, known as Hurricane Sandy. October 28th, can you give me a little recap?
Well, that night I was doing the things that probably almost everybody in our area was doing. I was making sure the flashlights had batteries, extra water. Sure enough, the power went out. I don't remember what time. Trees were going down on our property. It was a scary night for us and for a lot of other people. You know, the next morning was just a matter of kind of walking around the neighborhood and seeing all the trees that were down. We actually had every road trying to go out of our neighborhood. Every road was blocked by a major tree coming down. So we felt a little bit trapped that next morning. We had no idea the scope of the hurricane at that point. We didn't know how huge it was. We knew that we were impacted, but we had no communication with the outside world to know how big it was.
All of a sudden, some parishioners from your organization come to you and tell us what happens.
Well, for that next day or two, we were just getting by, lighting fires in the fireplace, and I got a phone call. The cell phones were working. I got a phone call from somebody in our church named Bob Thompson, and he called and said, "Hey, I've been down to far Rockaway and Breezy Point. Those people really need a lot of help." That was one day after the storm that he went in. He was really the spearhead for all of our efforts.
So strategically, did you go into Breezy Point first, far Rockaway? You had 75 people, you're saying. Did you break it up? How'd you go about the mission?
It was very organic. I mean, Far Rockaway is on the way to Breezy Point, so we would stop there first. We literally would just drive around, look for the blocks that were the worst hit. Those were usually the ones right along the beach, where the cars were just destroyed by the storm surge, and people, we looked for the most scared looks on faces, basically. We literally drove around, got out of the car, and started walking around talking to people saying, how can we help you? And it was that easy. I mean, we had known because of Bob's presence there the day after the storm, we had known a few things to bring: big sump pumps to pump out basements, warm blankets, fresh food and water, diapers, formula, that kind of thing. We knew that, so we called on the church to provide, and they showed up with, people were donating their pickup trucks, their SUVs. They were driving to church with SUVs full of supplies from Costco. And so we just drove those in with our teams of people and literally drove around until we met people who needed help and we started helping them. And we adapted too. There were a lot of things we learned in those first few days. We showed up with things that nobody needed, and we showed up without things that people did need. So we just did it organically, and once we helped somebody, sometimes we'd have to bring furniture out of someone's house, furniture that had been ruined, and once we were done with that project, we'd turn to the person and we'd say, "Who do you know on this block who needs help?" And everybody knew how everyone else was doing. So they'd say, "Go talk to so-and-so, he's 3 houses down." And we'd show up there and we would just start helping there. We would do that until it started getting dark. Remember, there was no power in Far Rockaway either. So as soon as it started getting dark, I felt responsibility for my parishioners. So I loaded up everybody back into the cars and we drove back to Connecticut.
You must have made some incredible relationships. Can you talk to any of those from Breezy and also from Far Rockaway?
Yeah, we definitely did. We immediately made really solid friendships that we carry to this day. A lot of those people, especially from Far Rockaway, they drive up to our church in Connecticut on Sundays to come worship with us because they were so touched by the way that we helped them. And once you're down there helping people, you end up getting their cell phone numbers, and we sent gift packages, and we talk with these people frequently. I stood up at the pulpit one Sunday in December and asked for just a free will offering for people if they wanted to donate some extra money so we could help with Christmas for some of the families that we had been working with. Within the next few days, about $23,000 had been donated just for my congregation. And we were able to split that up and really help some people just with Christmas, because Christmas wasn't happening for them this year.
If someone wants to get involved to help now, what would you suggest them doing, Nathan?
There's a couple different ways to go. There's one organization that I found out about on Staten Island. It's called Project Hospitality. They did a lot of work. They were a homeless outreach before the storm hit, and they ended up having a lot of work on their hands once the storm hit. But I think the Red Cross does a good job of divvying up funds. I would recommend people donating there. Our church is no longer accepting donations in a formal way. if people want to still get involved, we can help them if they wanted to check out our, if they wanted to call the church office and find out more.
And you also have a website too if they want to go into
stanwichchurch.org. But one of the things we discovered, speaking of other agencies and organizations, I said a few minutes ago that we were some of the first people there responding. And, I'll tell you what happened in my own heart. I was frustrated with the government because they weren't there as early as we were. But then over the next few days, they showed up, and my heart changed a little bit because I realized that they were operating on a scale much larger than we ever could. They were setting up huge temporary housing. The airplanes were flying in over our head full of supplies, helicopters. They were operating on a scale that there's no way the church could ever do. So we learned to really appreciate what they were doing. They were doing things we couldn't do. But we also, I think it's important to know that the church was doing things that the government couldn't do. We were going into people's homes, into the messiest places of their homes where the storm had impacted. Mold was growing. It was really disgusting. It was unsafe. We were going in, we put on the gloves and the boots, and we were just helping people get the mold and the rot out of their home. And someone from my congregation very astutely said, "Only love cleans up." Only love cleans up. I really like that. Going into the dirtiest, darkest places of these impacted lives and cleaning up the mess. Only love could motivate somebody to do that. No government program could motivate that.
What did this do for your volunteers, though? This must have been something that was very moving for them, too. Can you share any stories in regards to the volunteers?
It was huge in the lives of many people at our church. It took people outside of themselves. There was one moment where I saw lives really being changed. We were working in this woman's home, trying to pull everything out that had become moldy and dangerous to her. And a couple of these guys from my church, successful guys, and I was out on the curb just bringing some trash out there, and I saw this minivan driving around, and they pulled up and said, "Hey, do you guys need any help?" And I looked in the minivan, and it was this group of like 6 people in the minivan. They're all in their early 20s or so, and they all looked really dirty, and they had been working hard. And I said, "Sure, what organization are you guys from?" And they said, "Occupy Wall Street." And I said, "Perfect, I can use your help in this house." So they went and parked the minivan, and I went back to my parishioner volunteers, and I said, "Guys, you're not going to believe this. We got some Occupy people coming to help us." And the looks on the guys' faces in my church were pretty funny. And so they were a little bit afraid, like, what are these guys going to be like? So, long story short, we've got a couple of Wall Street guys and a couple of Occupy Wall Street guys all hauling this huge broken refrigerator out of a woman's home together, working together. To me, it was a wonderful picture of what happens in crisis like this, where people, doesn't matter what your background is, doesn't matter what your beliefs are, somebody else needs help. They're in worse trouble than you are, and you go and respond and you help.
Pastor, you share with us some pictures that you were taking, and obviously you have a knack at it, but this one particular picture, can you tell us what's going on with this particular woman?
Sure. So this is far Rockaway. This is just, 4 or 5 days after the storm hit, I think. This woman here, she really just blew me away. She really impressed me so much. Her name is Janice. She's standing there in front of her home, which had been totally destroyed. Those are all of her belongings behind her that we were helping her bring out of the home because they were all covered in mold and become dangerous. You can see from the picture even that she had a beautiful smile.
I was going to say.
Her whole life had been impacted in a very negative way. And I'll never forget this moment in my whole life. I was in her home, and I was scooping up a huge garbage bag full of stuff, bringing it out to the curb. We had never met Janice, by the way. We got her name from somebody else in the neighborhood who said she needed help. So we showed up. She didn't know us. We didn't know her. And I was bringing that garbage bag out towards the street to this pile that you're looking at right here. And I heard a voice coming from the next room, and it was Janice. And I heard her singing. She was singing actually a worship song that we sang in our church. And the lyrics go, "Here I am to worship." And I was so blown away. And we were walking, and we ended up meeting each other in the hallway, and we locked eyes, and we finished the phrase of the song together. And tears were streaming down both our faces. And I didn't know she knew that song. She didn't know I knew that song. She gave me a whole new meaning for that song. Here I am to worship. She gave new context to the word here. Who could worship God in their own home, which had been totally destroyed by a freak superstorm? This woman could.
You just look at the smile on her face after, like you said, everything that's going on. I mean, that's a very strong person right there. The next picture here, it looks like you got the team here. What's going on here?
Yeah, so this is one of our volunteer teams gathered at the church. It's the early Saturday morning. It's a couple weeks after Hurricane Sandy had hit. And the picture is kind of just descriptive. You know, it's a beautiful campus that we have there in Greenwich, and everything you're looking at here was donated. The truck was donated for our use, the SUV, all the stuff in these cars. The car was donated, but also the time that these people had put in. They just showed up, you know, early morning. They'd work hard in far Rockaway or Breezy Point until it got dark. You can see there's smiles on their faces. There were very tired versions of those same smiles on the same faces at the end of the day, and a lot dirtier clothes.
All right, I got to ask you this. Pastor, why do you have a picture of your dirty boots?
You know, this was obviously at the end of a long work day. We'd been in someone's crawl space pulling out infected insulation, infected by mold, and we had spent hours and hours down there. My back was aching, my knees were aching, and I looked down at my feet after I was taking off my dust mask and all of that, and I saw, you know, just how disgusting everything was, and the word from Scripture came right into my mind where it says, "How beautiful are the feet of those who bring good news." And when I looked at these ugly feet, it reminded me of that passage, how beautiful are the feet of those who bring good news. You know, I think the person who wrote that in the Bible wasn't thinking about how beautiful the actual feet looked, but how beautiful it was that somebody brought good news on those feet. And so that's what I was reminded of when I looked down at my boots that afternoon.
Wow. You know, Nathan, I just want to thank you because you brought a lot of light and a lot of hope to people that must have been really down and out. And I think you and your congregation and all the volunteers deserve a lot of credit for the work you did. But you know, what about you personally? What did you get out of all this? I mean, because you're a pastor, and I know you, and I know the work you do for people, and you don't look for any type of, you know, pat on the back or any type of kudos. It's just who you are. But what did it do for you, this whole circumstance?
Yeah, I appreciate you saying that. You know, I think for me, you know, when the storm first hit, as I described earlier, we were trapped on our streets. My first human instinctual response was, woe is me. I can't believe this is happening to me. But then over the next hours and days, my perspective broadened a little bit. And I thought, wait a minute, if I'm in this kind of shape, and I'm actually still okay. You know, we had fresh water, we had food, we had safety. If I was in this kind of shape, there might be someone else out there who's in worse shape than me. And that was actually very freeing for me to kind of get outside myself a little bit, to kind of get over myself, to say, you know, if there's somebody else in need and I can do a little thing to help them, then why not do it? You know, and that's what a lot of people in the church discovered. The people that I know were volunteering down in Far Rockaway and Breezy Point. They were actually much better equipped to handle their own crises. You know, some of these people had trees on their homes or on their cars, so they were in trouble themselves. But once they went down near the shore, they realized, you know what, I don't have it as bad as these people do, and that gave a good perspective on their own home. So I saw it as a really positive thing, and that's what happened to me personally.
And what you and your team of volunteers have done are really the epitome and the testament of what this show is all about. I can't thank you enough and the people that you go out and serve every day, what they've done for a lot of people who probably felt that really knew what despair was all about, and you brought light and some hope into the world. Thanks to Nathan. Pastor Nathan Hart for being on my show. It's been a real pleasure.
That. Take care.